My name is Emily, and at 36 years old, I never expected to be a widow. On the day of my husband Daniel's funeral, my own sister Monica destroyed me with one sentence: "My son is your husband's child." I have his will, and I know his secret. She announced it to everyone, claiming half of my $750,000 house. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. But what she did not know was why I could barely hold back my laughter. And you won't believe what happened next. Before I continue, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more stories about family betrayal you'll never forget. I still remember the night I met Daniel, as if it were yesterday. I was 27, living in New York, working long hours in a small publishing house, and honestly, I wasn't expecting love to find me. I went to a charity gala with my friend, only because she begged me. It was one of those evenings where everyone seemed more interested in being photographed than actually helping the cause. My feet hurt from standing in heels, and I was counting the minutes until I could leave when I noticed him. Daniel wasn't like the others. He didn't hover around the wealthiest donors, didn't speak in rehearsed lines. He stood off to the side, holding a glass of water, talking to one of the event volunteers as if she were the most important person in the room. His face lit up when he smiled, and I was struck by his calm confidence. When my friend introduced us later that evening, something clicked. His handshake was warm, his eyes sincere, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. We started talking, and I forgot all about my aching feet. Daniel worked in finance, but he had none of the arrogance I had come to expect from Wall Street men. He was grounded, thoughtful, and surprisingly funny. He told me he had grown up in South Carolina, in Charleston, and that one day he hoped to return there to build a life away from the constant noise of New York. I laughed, telling him I couldn't imagine leaving the city, but secretly, the idea of quiet streets and fresh air stayed in my mind. Our first date happened a week later, in a small Italian restaurant tucked away in the West Village. He was the kind of man who remembered details: how I preferred tea over coffee, how I always carried a notebook in my bag to jot down ideas, how I hated the sound of my alarm clock and set 3 different ones just to be safe. With Daniel, I felt seen, not just looked at. 2 years later, he proposed to me in Central Park, under a tree that was just beginning to bloom with spring. It wasn't a grand public gesture, no crowd, no photographer hiding in the bushes. Just us on a quiet bench where we had often walked and talked. He pulled out a simple ring and said, "Emily, I don't want to imagine a life without you. Will you marry me?" My answer was yes, through tears I couldn't hold back. After our wedding, a modest but beautiful ceremony with close friends and family, we made a bold decision. We left New York behind and bought a house in Charleston. The house wasn't grand, just a white 2-story home with blue shutters and a wraparound porch. It needed work, but it had charm, and we wanted something we could build together. The first year in Charleston felt like a dream. I found a job teaching literature at a local college, and Daniel continued his career remotely, traveling occasionally for business, but spending most of his time at home. We painted walls together, argued playfully over furniture choices, planted flowers in the backyard. Every corner of that house held memories of us laughing, working, and imagining a future. There was only one shadow: children. We wanted them desperately. For years, we tried, month after month, riding the emotional roller coaster of hope and disappointment. I remember the doctor visits, the quiet car rides home after hearing the same word again and again, unexplained. It wasn't that we couldn't try treatments, but deep down, we realized that biology wasn't on our side. At first, I felt broken. I cried at baby showers, avoided walking past the children's section in stores. Daniel, however, never let me drown in guilt. He held me, reassured me, and reminded me that our life together was enough. "Emily," he said one night as we lay in bed, "a family isn't only made of children. It's us. It's the home we build. It's the love we share." Slowly, I began to believe him. Instead of focusing on what we couldn't have, we poured ourselves into what we did. We invested in our home, turning it into a warm, welcoming place for friends and family. We hosted dinners, filled the house with music and laughter, and built traditions that belonged only to us. Professionally, we thrived. I advanced at the college, earning respect from students and colleagues. Daniel rose in his company, admired not just for his intelligence, but for his integrity. He never cut corners, never compromised his values, and people trusted him. That trust was something rare in his field, and it made me proud to be his wife. On weekends, we would take long drives out of town, stopping at roadside diners or wandering through antique shops. Sometimes we'd sit by the beach in silence, watching the waves crash and feeling content just being together. It wasn't the life we had once imagined, but it was ours. When people asked about children, we would smile and say, maybe someday, and leave it at that. We knew our happiness wasn't incomplete, even if others didn't understand. What mattered was that we had each other, and that bond was unshakable. Or at least, that's what I believed at the time. If Daniel was the calm, steady anchor in my life, Monica was the constant storm that never seemed to settle. She was 2 years younger than me, but from the time we were kids, it always felt like I was the older sister. I was the one who had to be responsible, who had to clean up after her mistakes, who had to stand there while she got away with things that would have landed me in endless lectures. Growing up, the differences between us couldn't have been more obvious. I was the one who worked hard in school, held part-time jobs to save up for college, and followed through on my promises. Monica was the one who skipped classes, switched hobbies every month, and found herself surrounded by drama that always somehow wasn't her fault. Our parents tried to balance their reactions, but even when they scolded her, Monica had this way of making everyone feel sorry for her. She could cry on command, twist the story until she looked like the victim, and in the end, I was the one who had to compromise. That pattern didn't stop when we became adults. If anything, it only grew worse. While I was working long hours in New York and later building a life with Daniel in Charleston, Monica drifted from one thing to another. She went to beauty school but dropped out after a year. Tried selling real estate but couldn't pass the licensing exam. Got a job as a receptionist but was fired for personality conflicts. Each failure came with excuses and long, tearful phone calls that ended with her asking for money. I lost count of how many times I wired her a few $100s just until next week, or covered her rent when she was about to be evicted. She always promised to pay me back, and sometimes she did 20 here, 50 there, but never enough to make a dent in what she owed. Daniel used to say, "Emily, you're too kind to her. You know she's using you." And maybe he was right. But she was my sister. No matter how reckless she was, I couldn't quite bring myself to cut her off. It wasn't just the money, though. There was always this undercurrent of jealousy between us, one that Monica never really tried to hide. When Daniel and I got engaged, she laughed and said, "Wow, didn't think you'd be the first one down the aisle." Guess miracles happen. When we bought our house in Charleston, she rolled her eyes and muttered something about how unfair it was that I got to live in a nice place while she was stuck in an apartment with a leaky ceiling. I tried to brush it off, to remind myself that envy made people say cruel things, but it cut deeper than I admitted at the time. It felt like no matter what I accomplished, Monica had to tarnish it, as if my happiness was somehow an insult to her own struggles. Holidays with her were always tense. She would arrive late, often in some flashy outfit she couldn't afford, and dominate the conversation with tales of her latest job or relationship drama. If anyone tried to talk about me, my work, my marriage, our house, she would interrupt, shift the focus back to herself, or make a sarcastic remark that left the room in awkward silence. Our parents, not wanting to stir conflict, usually let it slide. "That's just Monica," they'd say, as if her constant need to overshadow me was a personality quirk rather than cruelty. Over the years, I noticed a pattern. Whenever I had something good happen, Monica would either dismiss it or try to ruin it. When I got a promotion, she accused me of being a teacher's pet at work. When Daniel and I celebrated our 5th anniversary with a trip to Italy, she complained that I was rubbing my happiness in her face. And when we struggled with infertility, something deeply painful for me, she turned it into another way to attack me. "Maybe it's karma," she once said, half joking but with that sharp edge in her voice. You always acted like you were better than me. Maybe the universe is humbling you. I should have cut her out of my life then. I should have recognized how toxic she was. But blood ties are powerful, and I kept hoping she'd grow up, find stability, and maybe even learn to be happy for me. Instead, her life spiraled further. She dated men who treated her badly, then blamed everyone but herself for how things turned out. She maxed out credit cards, then begged me to help her avoid bankruptcy. She jumped from one half-baked business idea to the next: handmade jewelry, fitness coaching, an online boutique, none of which lasted more than a few months. And every time she failed, she looked at me as though my steady life with Daniel was some kind of personal attack on her. Our rivalry wasn't loud or obvious, but it was always there, simmering under the surface. Monica would smile for photos with me, then whisper cutting comments when no one else could hear. She would hug Daniel hello at family gatherings, but I could see the way her eyes lingered on him, just a little too long. At the time, I told myself it was all in my head, that I was being paranoid. That despite her flaws, Monica was still my sister, and I couldn't believe she'd ever cross a line that truly mattered. But I was wrong. Daniel's death came like a bolt from the blue, a kind of pain I never imagined I could endure. One moment, life was ordinary. He was heading to the gym on a Saturday morning, teasing me for staying in my robe while drinking coffee, and the next, the phone rang, shattering everything. A car accident. The words felt like ice water poured over my entire body. The officer on the line said it quickly, clinically, as if it was just another routine call for him. For me, it was the end of the world. When I arrived at the hospital, he was already gone. I pressed my hands against his still chest, willing it to rise, begging him to come back. My sobs echoed in the sterile white room, but nothing changed. The man who had been my entire future was suddenly only a memory. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of grief. I woke up every morning to the unbearable silence of our house. His toothbrush still stood in the holder, his half-read book lay open on the nightstand, his jacket hung on the chair where he had left it. Every detail screamed of his presence, and yet he was nowhere. I couldn't breathe without feeling the crushing weight of loss. Nights were the worst, the cold side of the bed, the absence of his steady breathing, the knowledge that I would never again wake to his arms around me. Friends and neighbors came by with casseroles, flowers, and endless words of sympathy, but I felt numb. I nodded, thanked them, and then retreated into myself. Even at the funeral, standing in black by his coffin, I couldn't truly process what was happening. I heard the pastor speak, saw people crying, but it all felt distant, as though I were watching someone else's life unravel. It was in this fragile state that Monica stepped forward. She hadn't shown up at the hospital the night of the accident, hadn't called to check on me in the days after, but she appeared at the funeral in a bright red dress, a choice so inappropriate that people whispered. She hugged me tightly, her perfume overwhelming, and whispered in my ear, "Stay strong, sis. I'll take care of you." Something in her tone felt wrong, but I was too broken to fight. 2 days after we buried Daniel, she called. Her voice was falsely sweet. "Emily, I know you're sad, but it's Ethan's birthday this weekend. You have to come. It'll be good for you to be around people, to get out of the house. You can't just sit alone forever." Part of me wanted to scream at her. How could she expect me to go to a child's birthday party when I had just buried my husband? But the truth was, I had been drowning in grief, and maybe she was right. Maybe a few hours around life and laughter could help me breathe. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The party was held at a local play center. The smell of pizza and frosting hung in the air, balloons bobbed against the ceiling, and children's laughter rang through the space. It was a world away from the dark fog I was living in. I stood in the corner, holding a paper plate with untouched cake, watching Ethan blow out his candles. He was a sweet boy, innocent in all of this, and I managed a faint smile when he looked at me and waved. But then Monica clapped her hands, gathering everyone's attention. Her eyes sparkled, her voice rose above the noise. "I have something very important to say." The room quieted, parents turning their heads, children pausing mid-play. I froze, uneasy, sensing something terrible about to unfold. Monica beamed as though she were the star of a show. "You all know this is Ethan's special day. But what you don't know, she paused dramatically, is that Ethan's father wasn't who you think. Ethan's father was Daniel, my sister's husband. The words sliced through the air like a knife. Gasps echoed around the room. A plastic cup dropped to the floor, spilling soda across the carpet. I felt the blood drain from my face, my legs trembling as if they might give out. Monica wasn't finished. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her purse and held it up like a prize. And before he died, Daniel made a will. He left everything to me and Ethan. He was going to leave Emily. He told me everything. He loved me, not her. The crowd erupted, shocked looks, a few people even clutching their children closer as if scandal might be contagious. I stood there, silent, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Everyone's eyes turned to me, waiting for me to scream, to collapse, to lash out. But something unexpected happened instead. Despite the humiliation, despite the sting of betrayal she tried to paint, I felt a laugh bubble up inside me. Not loud, not hysterical, but a small, incredulous laugh. Because I knew something Monica didn't. Something that made her entire performance crumble in my mind before it even began. I watched as they looked at Ethan's sweet, innocent Ethan, oblivious to the circus his mother was creating, and then back at me with those pitying eyes. In their minds, I was the betrayed wife, left childless, left with nothing, replaced by her prettier, bolder sister. They looked at me with judgment, with curiosity. Still, the laughter swirled inside me like champagne bubbles. Because 2 years earlier, Daniel had made a decision, one that only he, I, and his doctor knew about. After one bleak winter of negative tests and hollow encouragements, Daniel sat at our kitchen table in Charleston and said, I don't want our marriage to live inside a countdown app. He tapped his phone screen off and slid it away. I love you. I love our life. I don't want biology to hold a knife to our throat. A week later, we met with a urologist. We asked careful questions. We went home with a folder, a consent form, and the odd relief of finally stepping off a treadmill that had ground our hearts down to dust. The day of the procedure, I drove him to the clinic before work, packed a cooler with ice packs and 2 bottles of Gatorade, and waited in the lobby pretending to read a magazine. He texted me a bad joke from pre-op about joining the ranks of retired swimmers. I rolled my eyes and sent a heart. It was quick. He walked out a little pale, holding the paper bag with instructions, and we spent the rest of the afternoon on our couch with a bag of frozen peas and an old baseball game murmuring from the TV. That night, when I asked if he was sure, he kissed my forehead. I am more sure of you than anything, he said. I want our home to stop being a clinic. We told no one. Not my mother, who loved to prescribe solutions. Not friends who counted ovulation for sport. And certainly not Monica, who had a way of turning private things into weapons. The only other person who knew was Dr. Klein, the urologist, who documented the procedure and later confirmed, after follow-up tests, that Daniel's fertility would not return. The file lived on a server with a password Daniel could recite even in his sleep. He saved a certified letter from Dr. Klein in our important papers box, sealed and notarized, because Daniel was the kind of man who studied life by organizing it. You might think the decision would make our closeness feel smaller. It didn't. It removed the scoreboard. It gave us back ordinary evenings, pasta simmering on the stove, records spinning, my feet in his lap while I graded papers. We talked seriously about adoption and about mentoring, about choosing family as an act rather than an accident. But before we were ready to pursue anything, life did what it always does. It tested our peace. Monica had been circling for years, but after we moved to Charleston, she made a sport of the boundary push. Late-night texts to Daniel you up. That she claimed were jokes. Drunken voicemails slurring how he deserved to be adored by someone who got him. You and Emily are so vanilla, she said once, laughing in our kitchen after inviting herself in with a 6-pack. Don't you ever get bored? Daniel told her firmly to stop. She pouted, then sent a heart emoji anyway. He started saving things, screenshots, timestamps, call logs, quietly, almost apologetically. I feel gross doing this, he said, filing an email string into a labeled folder on his laptop. But someday I might need a memory that doesn't depend on being believed. He wasn't dramatic. He was prepared. When Monica accidentally brushed his arm at Thanksgiving and whispered, "If you were mine, we'd already have a baby," he caught my eye across the room and shook his head very slightly. The signal we developed for not today. Not here. I've got you. In the spring before he died, he made an appointment with an attorney downtown, a soft-spoken man named Thomas Avery, who kept family photos on his bookshelf and listened more than he talked. Daniel told him everything. The infertility years. The vasectomy. The secrecy. Monica's messages. He laid out the receipts and asked for something that felt, even then, like overkill, a will that anticipated mess. The first page was simple. I, Daniel Graham, leave the home and the entirety of my estate to my wife, Emily Graham, to be held outright, with instructions for a charitable fund we had dreamed of starting, a small scholarship in my students' names, a grant for the literacy program at my college, repairs for the church roof that leaked every hurricane season. He declined to name alternates outside me. He included a clause disinheriting any claimant not related by blood or adoption, and a very specific line about no bequests or trusts for Monica Reed or her minor child, Ethan Reed, written at Thomas's insistence even though it felt needlessly pointed that day. Then came the part that makes me shake even now. Daniel signed an affidavit describing the vasectomy, attached Dr. Klein's notarized letter, and authorized Thomas to release both only if someone alleged he fathered a child outside our marriage or if anyone contested my inheritance. "I hope this is a waste of paper," Daniel told the lawyer, smiling without humor. "But my sister-in-law plays with matches. I'd rather soak the rags before she finds them." Thomas nodded, professional and calm, but I saw his eyebrows lift when he scrolled through the screenshots. There were messages I hadn't seen. Monica hinting that she and Daniel had unfinished chemistry, Monica asking which hotel he stayed at during a conference, Monica sending a photo of a sonogram from when she was pregnant with Ethan with the caption, "Some people make miracles together." Daniel had replied exactly once, "Do not contact me like this again. Respect my marriage." After that, silence, his boundary, firm as a locked door. We left the office with copies sealed in heavy envelopes. Daniel insisted one remain in Thomas's fireproof safe, with instructions that it could be retrieved by me or by counsel if anything happened to him. He paid extra to have the documents recorded with a date-stamped inventory. He shook Thomas's hand and said, "I'm probably the world's most boring client." Thomas smiled. Boring is what keeps families out of court. At home that evening, Daniel grilled salmon on the porch while thunderheads stacked over the marsh. He set my plate down and touched my shoulder. "I don't ever want you to be cornered by someone else's story," he said. "If trouble comes, open the drawer. You'll have the truth." I remember the cicadas, the hum of our old ceiling fan, the scent of rain lifting from warm wood. I teased him for being morbid. He laughed. "I'm not planning to go anywhere, Em. I'm planning for you to never doubt that I chose you." After that, life returned to its ordinary rhythms. Work. Weekends by the water. A creaky cabinet door we kept meaning to fix. We never spoke of the vasectomy outside our house. It was the spine of our privacy, not a headline. When Monica flitted in and out, we were polite but vigilant. Daniel blocked her at one point. She found new numbers, then grew bored and moved on to other dramas. He added each incident to the folder, like a lighthouse keeper marking storms in the log. It wasn't fear. It was record-keeping, the unglamorous muscle of love. So when Monica stood at her son's party waving a paper and claiming a legacy that was never hers, the flood of laughter inside me wasn't cruelty. It was recognition. I had lived in the truth long enough to know it would hold. And Daniel had made sure of it. He had taken a step that made her allegation biologically impossible. He foresaw the way Monica might twist a story to serve her needs, and he refused to leave me defenseless in the court of rumor. I lowered my eyes to avoid letting the laughter spill onto my face. My fingers gripped the edge of my paper plate, crumpling it as my body trembled. To the onlookers, I must have looked like a woman trying to control her sobs. She went on, her voice growing louder, more self-assured, mistaking my silence for defeat. Daniel couldn't bear living with a wife who couldn't give him children. He wanted a son, and he had won my son. He told me so many times that Ethan was his pride and joy. That's why he wrote this will. That's why he wanted us to have everything. The lies flowed from her mouth with such ease that a few guests nodded, half convinced. One of the mothers, clearly uncomfortable with the spectacle, tried to steer her child back toward the cake table. Another whispered something about calling it a day, gathering her things. But Monica didn't notice. She was too busy parading her evidence, unfolding the paper and holding it high for people to see. "This is Daniel's signature," she insisted, jabbing her finger at the page. "He wanted me to be the one to carry on his name, not Emily. He told me he regretted marrying her." That last line was too much. I pressed my lips tightly together, but a small laugh escaped, sharp and sudden. Heads turned toward me. Monica's smile faltered. "What's so funny, Emily?" she snapped, her voice laced with irritation. I lifted my eyes slowly, meeting hers with a calmness that must have unsettled her. "Nothing, Monica," I said softly, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Go on. Tell them more." Her eyes narrowed, suspicious, but the crowd's attention emboldened her again. She straightened her back and launched into another monologue about how Daniel had promised her the house in Charleston, how he couldn't wait to finally be free from me, how Ethan was proof of his true love. Around us, the guests shifted uncomfortably. I noticed a few people glance at me, expecting me to break down, maybe even to faint. I wanted to scream the truth in her face right then and there. But I stayed silent. Timing was everything. As she finished her tirade, she held the paper high once more. "This is Daniel's last wish. You all heard it. You all saw it. Ethan is a son, and everything belongs to us." And that was when I let out the smallest, most controlled chuckle, just enough to cut through the silence, just enough to make Monica's face flush crimson. She glared at me furious. "Why are you laughing?" I tilted my head slightly, studying her as though she were a child caught red-handed. But for now, though, I let her enjoy her moment. Let her believe she had won. Because soon enough, the lies she had shouted so loudly would come crashing down around her. The morning after the party, I woke with the taste of balloons and frosting still sour in my mouth and a steadiness I couldn't explain. I made coffee, fed the neighbor's cat that keeps slipping through our fence, then went to the drawer Daniel had once tapped with 2 fingers. The key was right where he said it would be, on a ribbon I remembered from a Christmas gift, along with a card from the bank on Meeting Street. Safe deposit box number, my name printed neatly, and a note in Daniel's handwriting, in case of emergency. The bank lobby was cold and polite. A woman in a navy blazer checked my ID, asked me to sign the access card, then led me downstairs to a room that smelled like paper and metal. She slid out the slim box, placed it on a small table, and left me alone. For a minute, I just looked at it, breathing. Then I used the tiny key and lifted the lid. Inside lay a thick envelope and a smaller one with my name on it in Daniel's square, careful handwriting. I opened the small one first. There was a letter on our stationery, the kind he used for holiday notes, dated 8 months earlier. "Emily, if you're reading this, something happened I didn't plan for. I hate that this letter has to stand where I should. But I know this life, and I know how grief attracts storytellers. First, eat something that isn't just sweet. And sit more in sunlight. Second, go see Thomas Avery. I've given him everything that will matter if anyone tries to steal your normal life. The paper will do it for you. Third, don't answer Monica. Not calls, not texts, not even small talk. And remember, I love you. Choosing you was the best decision I ever made." I pressed the page to my chest and cried in that quiet, fluorescent room. When I could see again, I opened the bigger envelope. It held copies of our will, the notarized letter from Dr. Klein, a printed index of files with names like Monica texts and party contingencies, and a single flash drive taped to a card that read, "Backup for Thomas." I took the envelope and letter, thanked the vault attendant with the stunned politeness of the newly widowed, and walked out into the Charleston heat. The live oaks along Meeting Street threw dappled shade across the sidewalk. An hour later, I was in Thomas Avery's office. His assistant brought me tea and the kind of silence that doesn't press for conversation. When Thomas came in, he didn't ask about the party. He simply set a red well folder on the table between us, the same kind Daniel and I had seen months before. "I'm sorry we're opening this," he said. "But I'm glad we prepared." He slid across a stack of documents. The top pages were familiar: the will with the charity provisions, the affidavit about the vasectomy, Dr. Klein's notarized statement. Then he tapped a tab marked Exhibit H, correspondence. "These came from 3 places," he explained. "First, what Daniel already preserved, messages your sister sent him. Second, emails she mistakenly forwarded to his old work address that still routes through a monitoring rule we set up at Daniel's request." He glanced at me to make sure I understood the goodbye he had planned for trouble. "Third, a friend of your sister's reached out this morning. She attended the party. Her conscience won." He opened to a printed text thread, header showing Monica Reed and a number I recognized. The timestamps began 10 weeks before Daniel's accident. The first message made my stomach twist. "I can fix this debt mess if I play it right. He's a soft target." Then, "He and Emily have no kids." Perfect narrative. A week later, "You know anyone who can copy signatures? Just need it to pass a glance." The replies, from a contact saved as Tasha, were hesitant at first, then practical. "I don't want to be part of this," and later, "Monica, this is illegal." Another printout showed emails from Monica to a generic address for a template service. She asked for a simple last will form and instructions on notarization. "I'll fill in the names," she wrote. Time sensitive. In a later message, she asked whether a will printed at home could be valid and whether a notary for hire could travel to her. The response warned her about witnesses and suggested she consult a lawyer. She replied, "I can't pay a lawyer. I need this to clear my cards before they sue. He owes me." Thomas turned the page to a series of past due notices, copies that had come from the friend, store cards, a medical bill in collections, a letter from a payday lender threatening court. There was more. A DM exchange from social media, printed with logos and avatars, where Monica bragged to someone named Kara writes that she had the perfect angle because nobody questions a grieving mother. When Kara responded, "This is going to blow up your life," Monica sent a shrug emoji and typed, "Not if I get the house first." I stared at the table until the documents blurred. "How did you get the friend to come forward?" I asked finally. "She came herself," Thomas said. "Tasha. She heard your sister's announcement, felt sick, and emailed the contact address Daniel left with me if anything ever goes wrong. We met at 8 this morning. She didn't want to hurt Ethan. She wanted to stop a crime." He slid a thumb drive toward me, the twin of the one I'd found at the bank. "This is a copy of everything you've seen and more. I'll maintain the originals. I've also prepared a brief timeline showing that Monica began inquiring about will templates before Daniel's death and that she searched phrases like, 'how to claim paternity without DNA' on public forums. All of that is preserved through lawful means, screenshots provided by her friend and emails routed voluntarily." I nodded, the nausea settling into something sharper. "So she was drowning," I said, almost to myself. "And she chose to pull me under to stand taller." Thomas's expression was sad but steady. "Desperation explains. It doesn't excuse." He handed me a thin blue folder. Inside was a one-page letter Daniel had written for Thomas to deliver to me alongside the exhibits, a legal companion to the kitchen letter. The salutation was more formal, to my wife, Emily Graham, but the heart was the same, reminders that I wasn't alone, that he had anticipated noise. I left with the red well, the thumb drive, and the weight of what I now carried, not just proof, but a record of intent. Back home, I spread the pages across our dining table the way I used to lay out student essays. I made a simple dinner and ate it standing, rereading his letters between bites. The investigation did not bring joy. It brought clarity. I charged my phone, placed it face up on the kitchen table, and enabled the recorder. The little red bar slid to the right with a soft click. My hands were steady in a way they hadn't been for weeks. Then, I dialed Monica. She picked up on the second ring, syrupy and triumphant. "So, ready to hand over his keys, Emily?" I slid the blue folder toward me. Listen me carefully, I said, my voice calm, almost clinical. Daniel's will, executed and witnessed last spring. Explicit clause excluding you and Ethan from any bequest. Paper rustled. Dr. Klein's notarized letter confirming Daniel's vasectomy 2 years ago and the follow-up tests. And your messages to Daniel. You and M are vanilla. If you were mine, we'd already have a baby. He asked you to stop. He blocked you. And he documented all of it. For a moment, Monica hesitated. People flirt, she snapped, but softer now. So I continued, emails you sent to a template site asking for a will you could print at home. The timestamp is 8 weeks before Daniel died. Your text to Tasha. I can fix this debt mess if I play it right. He's a soft target. You know anyone who can copy signatures? Her breath hitched. Tasha came forward, I said. Out of guilt. Not to hurt you. To stop you. Silence throbbed. I let it sit. I wanted the truth to expand until it touched every wall. I softened my tone for the part of her that was still my sister. Monica, I have the certified medical record. I have your messages, your drafts, your calendar notes, and the witnesses who saw you perform that stunt at Ethan's party. The will you waived was a forgery. We both know it. A long inhale. Then the crack. You always think you're better than me, she said, but the bite was gone. You always get the house, the good man, the respect. Her voice shook. I was drowning, Emily. The cards, the rent, the surprise medical bill, I was getting eviction notices. Every time I looked at you in that big Charleston place, drinking tea on your porch like life was a magazine, I wanted to scratch my eyes out. I closed my eyes. So you decided to burn my life down to warm your hands. I thought. Her breath broke. I thought I could take what I deserved. Don't say it wasn't love with Daniel. I wanted him. I wanted his life. I wanted a way out. But it wasn't love, I said quietly. It was your hunger. On the recording, I heard my own chair creak as I leaned forward. Say the words, Monica. And she didn't ask which words. Yeah, I forged it, she whispered. I made the will. I lied about Ethan. He isn't Daniel's. He can't be. What else? I continued. She went on in small admissions, like stones dropped into water. The day she bought the notary stamp online and realized it was illegal to use. The man she messaged about copying signatures who ghosted her. The decision to stage the reveal at Ethan's party because people are generous around children. The belief that pity would be faster than court. The way jealousy hardened into plan and plan into action. By the time she finished, she was crying openly. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't noble. But it was real. I let the silence hold us. Then I clicked my pen. Here are my conditions, I said. A moment of tremor. A public confession. Today. Not a slanted post. A clear statement. What you lied, forged, and used your son's birthday to humiliate me. Or, I am reporting to the police. But, Emily, my job, she snaped. You change jobs every season, I stated. What you need is a spine. She made a small, wounded sound. I didn't rescue her. My second condition. Therapy. Not 2 sessions for show. A real program with attendance records I can verify. She sniffed. I can't afford. I'll pay the first month, I said, and the words tasted strange, like medicine. After that, you budget. Sell the handbags. Cancel the subscriptions. Get on a payment plan. And if I don't, she asked. If you violate any of this, I file everything with the DA, with your landlord, with anyone who needs to know. I will not save you from the consequences you've been outsourcing to me since high school. I said, and my voice went iron. She was quiet so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, small as a child, okay? You'll meet me at Thomas Avery's office in 2 hours, I said. You'll sign a sworn statement retracting your claims. He'll notarize it correctly. She gave a little laugh, hopeless and wet. Of course the lawyer is named Thomas Avery. You and your perfect systems. I ended the call. The recorder clicked off. My kitchen filled with the sound of the ice maker dropping a fresh batch, ordinary and miraculous. I forwarded the audio to Thomas, texted him the ETA, and then, because grief and anger live side by side, I pressed my palms to the counter. 2 hours later, she really came. No lipstick, no bright dress, just a damp hoodie and hands that wouldn't stop moving. Thomas's conference room was quiet except for the scratch of his pen. He read the statement aloud. She nodded after each paragraph. When it was time, she signed. Thomas stamped. The sound of that notary seal, legal, proper, was a door closing. Before we left, I turned to her. The public post, I reminded. Today. She nodded, eyes on the carpet. I'll do it. And Monica, I added, softer than I expected, therapy isn't a punishment. It's a light. Step into it. We walked out together, but not side by side. Outside, Charleston was bright and unforgiving. I headed home with the signed confession in my bag and Daniel's letter in my pocket, the two weights balancing each other. Behind me, my sister stood on the sidewalk, pulling out her phone, opening the app where she'd built her little theater. A year has passed. I still wake some mornings reaching across the bed for a hand that isn't there, then remember, breathe, and place my palm on the cool sheet like a small benediction. Grief is quieter now, less a storm and more a tide. It goes out enough for me to make coffee, answer emails, sign papers, and then returns without warning when I find one of Daniel's notes in a book or catch his soap in the shower caddy. I let it come. I kept the house. I painted the porch swing the soft blue he liked and planted rosemary along the walk because he said it smelled like Sundays. His jacket still hangs on the back of the office chair, not as a shrine, but because I'm not ready to move it. The practical things went where they needed to, bills forwarded, accounts consolidated, lawn service paid for the months I forgot what day it was. Slowly, the machinery of life learned to run again. The biggest decision I made was the foundation. We called it the Daniel Graham Fund because there was no reason to be clever about love. I took a portion of the inheritance and placed it under a board with simple rules. Scholarships for first-generation students Daniel mentored. Small grants for the literacy program where I teach. Emergency stipends for local families when a broken car or a medical bill threatens to swallow their month. The paperwork had moments of headache, but the purpose did not. Thomas helped with filings, and the college set aside a tiny office above the campus bakery that smells perpetually of cinnamon and yeast. We gave the first scholarships in May. I wrote notes to each student on heavy paper, the way Daniel preferred, and included a line he used to say to his advisees, "Your work is proof you believed in tomorrow before it arrived." The letters I got back live in a shoebox on our bedroom shelf. One student enclosed a photo of her mother holding the award, cheeks wet and proud. Another wrote that he had nearly quit school the month his father lost his job, and the stipend bought groceries until the next paycheck. I keep my teaching load modest and spend afternoons on foundation tasks, phone calls, site visits, reading proposals in the sunroom with a legal pad and a mug of tea. I've learned the slow discipline of budgets and the fast kindness of small checks at the right time. We helped repair the church roof that leaked each storm. We funded a reading nook at the public library with beanbags and a shelf of picture books Daniel would have approved of. As for Monica, she fulfilled the conditions. The public confession came and went, the screen moved on, but the paper remains. She attends therapy. I know because the counselor's office sends me monthly confirmations with only dates as we agreed. The tone of her texts is different now, short, factual, never sent after 10. Ethan's parent-teacher conference is Tuesday. Can you recommend a budget app? Shift changed. Can you pick up cupcakes? She found steady work at a medical office, checking in patients and filing claims. It isn't glamorous, but it is honest, and she keeps it. The debt is shrinking. I've seen the statements because she asked me to hold her accountable. We are not close. Cool is the right word, no frost, but no warmth beyond the obligation we owe to a shared childhood and a boy we both love. Boundaries sit between us like clear glass. We meet in public places. We do not rehash the worst day. If she tries to joke her way around responsibility, I do not follow her. When she says, "I'm sorry," I nod, and we both understand that apology is not a rope back to the old house. Ethan is taller, full of questions, missing his front tooth for half the year. On his birthday, he ran across the lawn and hugged me so hard my glasses shifted, then asked if we could look at Mr. Daniel's tree, the live oak where Daniel once strung lights for a backyard dinner. He seemed satisfied by that. Children accept mysteries adults wrestle into knots. Ethan and I bake on some Saturdays. He cracks eggs with too much enthusiasm and sprinkles sugar like confetti. Monica drops him off, stays for 10 minutes, then leaves to run errands. When she returns, she thanks me. I say, "You're welcome." Sometimes we talk about the week, her stubborn copier, my student who found her voice in a public speaking elective. There are days when I am petty in my head. When I watch her laugh at something Ethan says and think of all the ways she once hurt me. Then a boy asks for more cinnamon on his toast, and the moment passes. I am not interested in curating my sister's redemption, only in maintaining my own peace. In the evenings, I walk the neighborhood just before the streetlights blink on. The marsh holds the last orange of the day, and the egrets look like moving commas. I talk to Daniel sometimes, quietly, the way you talk in a museum. I tell him where the money went that week. I tell him that the tomatoes didn't make it through the heat, that the rosemary did, that I found the watch he misplaced behind the bookcase. I tell him I miss him without begging the universe to renegotiate. At night, I turn off the lamps one by one, touch the doorframe as I pass, and lay the foundation's notebook on the kitchen counter for tomorrow. The calendar is filled in through fall, grant cycles, campus talks, Ethan's recital. The year remade me, not into someone stronger exactly, but into someone steadier. Your real family is not the people who profit from your pain, but the ones who guard your name when you aren't in the room. Family is the neighbor who carried casseroles to my porch without asking questions, the students who sent me clumsy condolence cards with earnest hearts, the lawyer who kept a quiet vigil over Daniel's will, and even Tasha, whose conscience outweighed fear. Monica confessed, found work, shows up for therapy, and takes care of Ethan. I keep my side of the road. I answer when it concerns the boy, keep the peace, and refuse to let old manipulation back in. I'll leave you with a question I still ask myself on hard nights. Could you forgive a sister who stood at a funeral and announced that her child was your husband's son? Would you keep your distance, or would you let her start over in the outer circle of your life? Tell me how you would have acted in my place in the comments below. And if this story met you where you needed it, hit like and subscribe to my channel to hear more true confessions about families, money, love, and the lines that keep us whole.